She was 21 years old. White paper, black ink, a message smuggled past Gestapo checkpoints. Sophie Scholl wasn't a soldier. She was a student with a stack of illegal leaflets and a death sentence for telling the truth.
And here we are again. Librarians are being fired, books banned, judges threatened. History is being rewritten in real time, not with leaflets this time, but with deleted websites, gag orders, and executive power.
We've always been told we know when fascism returned. We were wrong.
It doesn't goose step down the street. It scrubs transgender from the Stonewall Monument. It deletes Harriet Tubman from federal archives. It fires Carla Hayden for daring to keep the receipts.
But here's the thing about women. We remember.
We resist.
And we raise the next generation to never ask, how did this happen?
Because they'll already know.
Welcome to Moms Against the Machine. I'm Chelsey.
And I'm Jen. We're two moms in the suburbs of Texas who are done watching history repeat itself while politicians bank on us being too busy or too tired to notice.
This is episode 5. She Fought the Machine, part 1. I'm so excited to do a two-parter. We're going back to the rise of fascism in World War II. Not just the battles and the bombs, but the women who fought back in kitchens, classrooms, and underground networks. The ones whose names should be in every textbook, but somehow they're not.
We're talking about how fascism always starts with rewriting the story. And that's exactly what is happening in America today. From the banned books to the deleted archives to executive power grabs, it's not even subtle anymore.
So we're not going to be subtle either. This is for Sophie, Noor, Nancy, Hedy, and for every mom out there who's raising the next generation to question, challenge, and resist.
Let's get into it.
What is fascism, and why are women always the first ones to lose their rights? Before we celebrate the women who resisted, we have to understand what they were resisting, because fascism isn't just a word we throw around online when someone bans a book or says something vile into a microphone or comments on a Facebook post. It's a system, a blueprint, and it's unfolding again, this time with louder branding.
Fascism is government married to violence draped in a flag. It's extreme nationalism, scapegoating, manufactured crises, and the elimination of dissent. And yes, it's also deeply obsessed with controlling women, their labor, their fertility, their silence.
Let's talk patterns. Nazi Germany banned abortions, outlawed female employment in civil service, and rewarded motherhood like it was combat. The Mother's Cross was literally a medal for making babies. Gold for 8. That wasn't about love for mothers, it was about turning women into baby factories for the state. $5,000 for having a baby in America, anyone?
Like it doesn't cost so much more to have children.
Yeah, I'm sorry, like my $100,000 bill for my child being in the NICU as well.
Yeah. And the name National Socialist German Workers' Party, that wasn't socialism, that was word salad. Hitler hijacked leftist language to sell authoritarianism to desperate people. He gutted the workers' movement, executed socialist leaders, and gave control to industrialists. The goal was never about equality, it was obedience.
In Mussolini's Italy, women were told the highest honor was to die in childbirth. Birth control was outlawed. Women were told to populate the empire. Does that sound familiar? Because we're watching Texas flirt with the same language under different lighting.
Yeah, and when I was sitting getting my oil changed not too long ago, there was a little lady sitting beside me talking about how her pastor, who ironically is from South Africa, he talked about how they need to procreate. The right kinds of people need to procreate to further their agenda. He was preaching from the pulpit about this.
Well, you remember the NAAWP that I sent you?
Yes.
That was literally like in part of the NAAWP. For anybody wondering, is the National Advancement National Association of Advancement of White People, as like a way to combat what the NAACP was doing for civil rights. And they're like, oh, we go with everything that they want, like in a way to like not be racist. But then literally sit there and put, oh, white is actually all colors. And we should just keep
the absence of color.
I know. And we need to keep it like 50-50 on like 50% white, 50% black. I'm like, this is literally just racism, like coded. I mean, I already knew it was because I was reading it in the Thurgood Marshall story. So I had to look it up and I was like, what is wrong with these people?
In the world? That's insane.
I
And
know.
here we go again. In Francoist Spain, women were legally required to obey their husbands. Divorce was outlawed, and the regime kidnapped children from so-called degenerate mothers, political prisoners, Republicans, women who did not conform. Now, when we say Republicans here, we mean Spanish Republicans, anti-fascists fighting to preserve democracy, not the modern GOP. Context matters, just FYI.
And it wasn't just women. Fascism always needs more enemies. LGBTQIA plus people were labeled deviant and dangerous. In Nazi Germany, gay men were forced to wear pink triangles and sent to camps. Lesbians were often institutionalized. Trans people were erased and their identities criminalized and pathologized.
Journalists jailed or disappeared. Books burned. Speaking of, did you see where that recently that guy checked out all of these books on DEI and burnt them?
No, I did not see that.
Yes, he checked out probably it was a lot of books. I don't want to quote because I'm probably mistaken, but I saw it. He checked out a bunch of books on marginalized people and anything that was related to DEI and burned them. Students silenced, teachers fired or forced to teach state lies, propaganda like the stuff that they're trying to make us do now. Okay, and the disabled under the T4 program, the Nazis carried out mass sterilizations and killings of disabled children and adults. They called it mercy. It was murder. Institutional, industrial scale eugenics. And the worst part, America inspired them. And now we're falling back on an autism registry. And several people in the Doge committee favor eugenics. They have tweeted about it.
Yeah, did you actually see now where they found a study with Elon Musk where they're using Neuralink to help kids with autism focus? Like, that is literally what they're trying to do now.
I wouldn't trust him with a 10-foot pole near my child.
No, I don't trust any of that administration.
Yeah, same.
That's right. An autism registry. Oh, no, I don't like that. Okay. That's right. An autism. What is wrong with me?
A lot. I'm just kidding.
So much.
Let me just tell you, you are a weird loser, remember? Don't forget that. Don't you forget
I
that.
am a weird loser. I am a weird loser that brings a baby to a protest.
Not a childless cat lady. It's a weird loser who brings a baby to a protest.
I know. It's a weird lady that does. I don't have blue hair. I am not on social services. I'm not childless. I'm married. I do have cats.
Yeah.
So they haven't quite pegged me yet. I'm sure they're getting pegged.
They're on
though.
their way. They're well on their way. We should just get blue wigs next time.
Yes.
And I should borrow someone else's children.
I had somebody, they're like, oh, you freaking liberals. I'm like, I'm not a liberal. I don't like capitalism. Thanks.
Yeah. I actually hate capitalism. Okay, thanks, bye.
I was like, I don't really like that corporations are in charge of the entire world, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try this again. That's right. An autism registry. Long before the Holocaust, U.S. states were already sterilizing people deemed unfit to reproduce. The Nazis cited California's forced sterilization laws as a model.
This ideology. Oh, God, what is wrong with us
It's
today?
literally the first.
My tongue is heavy. This ideology isn't ancient. It's archived. It's in court records, medical textbooks, policies that we haven't fully repealed. It's a history that was never fully buried, just buried under red, white, and blue slogans.
Red, white, and fascist.
Mm-hmm.
So when people say, that can't happen here, what they really mean is they hope you don't know it already has.
So let's fast forward to 2025. What are we seeing? We're seeing the book bans again, curriculum purges, politicians trying to reclassify women as secondary wage earners, restricting their taxes and access to health care, cutting maternal health, prosecuting miscarriages, gutting education, and they're all doing it under the flag of freedom.
God, talking about prosecuting miscarriages
That
has
makes me
me all
sick.
in my feels. Whew. Okay. Sorry. Having been there, I cannot imagine the grief that you already feel from it and just the hopelessness. And then you're sitting there having to deal with criminal prosecutions. You're put in jail and you're literally grieving the loss of your child. It's so horrific.
And just think about if you have one and then you feel that you need to disguise or hide it so you don't even get to fully process it because you're trying to prevent yourself from being jailed.
Yeah.
That's just not okay.
We have literally just gotten to a point where we even feel comfortable speaking about it. and, trying to form a community with other women that have been in the same situation. And, because everybody used to hide it. And if you tell anybody in the older generation, they're like, you should really keep that to yourself. Like, we are just now getting out of that, and they want to prosecute people for it now.
Yep, they want to put them back in a cage.
And if you dare to speak up, you're labeled radical or woke or worse. Fascism thrives in fear, but it's fueled by silence.
Let's name it Project 2025. It is not a pseudo-theory. It's policy-driven blueprint by the Heritage Foundation that outlines how to dismantle civil rights protections, erase reproductive freedoms, abolish the Department of Education, and fill federal jobs with Christian nationalists.
And if you haven't listened to our earlier episodes yet, episode 2, we cover Project 2025, the origins of the Heritage Foundation, and how Ronald Reagan had started it and Trump is continuing it. This is the same formula women have fought for generations. Erase us from the workforce, silence us in schools, control our healthcare, police our bodies, rebrand it all as morality, then punish the ones who remember what came before.
And it's not even just about women anymore. It never was. They're coming for queer families, disabled communities, journalists, teachers, historians, immigrants, librarians, anyone who refuses, the national parks, anyone who refuses to salute and stay silent.
And we remember because our grandmothers weren't just housewives, they were warriors in heels. Our moms weren't just PTA presidents, they were survivors of systemic oppression. And we were the ones holding the receipts.
This isn't about doom. We don't want you to worry. This is about being vigilant because fascism doesn't knock. It builds a nursery. It joins your school board. It passes parental rights laws that censor your kid's classroom. But I will note that some things are changing. We're seeing a bit of a tide shift in a lot of areas. So May 3rd, the elections, Dallas really won. They voted down a lot of the MAGA book censoring people that were running for school board and mayors. They really did. So Katy, Texas was another one. Their president was very big in book bannings. Mansfield, Texas too. People seem to be paying attention and they're realizing and they're showing up with their vote. Now, voter turnout was still incredibly low, but I'm glad that the ones that turned out voted in the way that protects our freedoms.
Yes. So if it feels like the world is closing in, it's because it is. But we don't let it. We name it. We teach it. We fight it.
And we start by remembering the women and the people who said no the first time.
Now let's start talking about women who resisted anyway. So now that we've laid the groundwork, now that we understand how fascism silences, controls, and erases, let's talk about the ones who said no anyway. The women who saw the writing on the wall and grabbed a pen, a gun, a radio transmitter, or a stack of illegal leaflets.
And they weren't all perfect. They weren't always even recognized, but they were bold, brilliant, brave, and sometimes brutally honest about what it cost them.
Some of them resisted with violence, others with words, some paid with their lives, others had to wait decades just to be believed. But what they all have in common, they didn't wait for permission to fight back.
And as we move through their stories today, don't just admire them, learn from them, because fascism didn't end in 1945. It's rebranded and rebooted, and it's counting on us to forget that these women ever existed.
So let's remember them together. Jen, are you ready to cry?
Yeah, I'm hoping I don't cry. I really don't want to cry because this is heavy stuff.
I know it's already a hard day.
I've already been on the verge of tears multiple times today. Let's start with Sophie Scholl. She was 21. This does hit me in my feels because my daughter's 19 and is in college. Sophie was a university student, a sister, a daughter, a rebel. The White Rose was founded in 1942 at the University of Munich by Sophie's older brother Hans and a few other classmates and a professor. Sophie joined a little bit later that same year after she discovered her brother's involvement and insisted on participating despite knowing all the risks.
Little siblings, am I right?
Mm-hmm.
The White Rose wasn't some well-funded operation. It was a handful of university students, deeply moral, deeply scared, and deeply unwilling to let the Nazi regime go unanswered. They printed thousands of leaflets in secret, quoting Goethe, the Bible, and philosophy to call Germans to conscience. Their message? That silence made you complicit, that the German people had a duty to resist, not just for themselves, but for humanity.
And Sophie didn't just carry leaflets. She also helped write them. She transported them in her suitcase, dropped them in university stairwells, and even mailed them all across Germany. The Nazis underestimated her because she was young and female, and that was their mistake.
When she and Hans were arrested, she was interrogated by the Gestapo. She admitted everything, proudly, and refused to name anyone else. In her trial, she faced Roland Friesler, the same judge who sent thousands to their death. She never flinched.
And at one point, she told the court, somebody, after all, had to make a start. What we wrote and said is also believed by many others. They just don't dare express themselves as we did.
In prison, Sophie was comforting other prisoners. On the day of her execution, she looked out the window and said, "What does my death matter if through us thousands are awakened and stirred to action?" And her very last words, "The sun still shines."
Here I go. I'm getting emotional.
I know.
Every time you read that line, I'm like...
Okay. Yes,
She
me
did-
crying.
I know. Don't mind us. She didn't plead. She didn't ask for mercy. She stood in a courtroom of fascists and owned every word that she wrote. That is more spine. Oh my gosh. I'm too passionate. We're too passionate. We have too much passion. That is
She's
just
a baby.
I know. That's why I just think about my daughter. That's more spine than most politicians have in this country today.
She reminds me of so many young women today, organizing school walkouts like they just had in Nashville,
Yes.
speaking at school board meetings, writing protest signs in the margins of their homework. They aren't old enough to vote, but they're still risking everything to be heard.
And then we have Nancy Wake. She didn't just She didn't just resist. She led. Born in New Zealand and raised in Australia, she was working as a journalist in Paris when she witnessed the rise of Nazi brutality firsthand. She didn't cover the news, she became the news.
I think we kind of forget sometimes. I know Europeans do not forget this, but in America, we kind of forget how much Nazi control of France happened.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, D-Day and everything. We're like,
Right.
they stormed Normandy. But you kind of forget how that happened and how quickly France... We always talk about Germany, but we never really talk about what happened with France.
Yeah. We can't forget because it was all horrible. It was all horrific.
Yeah. I got a book from the library. It was an artist who fought in World War II, and he waited a very long time to publish his story. And it's like a 100-page book, but he was a black soldier, and he was put on a cargo ship, basically, detail. He would help unload the ships, and they ended up putting him on the beach for Normandy. And a lot of the people, once everything was unloaded, they made the black soldiers dig up the mines so that way the white soldiers coming in wouldn't get exploded. And they lost a lot of lives that way. And so
Awful.
My daughter and I we read that at the end of February. But
That would have made me
anyways,
cry too.
yeah, I was not super. But I'm still coming off of Sophie Scholl.
I know, me too. It's like heavy stuff.
I know. When the Nazis invaded France, Nancy joined the resistance. She helped smuggle Jewish families and Allied airmen across the Pyrenees. She was so good at evading the Gestapo that they called her the White Mouse and put a 5 million franc bounty on her head.
Later, she joined the British Special Operations Executive. I feel like we would be in that. An elite spy network.
I don't know about elite. I got too big of a mouth.
Wait,
Did they have a subpar
Right.
spy network?
A spy network for bees who can't keep their mouth shut?
Yes.
Later, she joined... Wait. Oh my gosh.
No, you know who I would be? I probably end up would have been being one of the prostitutes that gave the soldiers, 100 soldiers, chlamydia. I'd be like, well, I'm going to do my service
It's my civic duty.
to give them all chlamydia.
Oh my god. Okay, so she joined the British Special Operations Executive, which was an elite spy network. They parachuted her into occupied France, where she linked up with the Maquis, the rural French resistance. And then she
Rural juror.
I know, I really was like, don't say rural juror. Such a hard word. And then she didn't just support the movement, she commanded it.
Nancy Wake led over 7,000 resistance fighters in guerrilla warfare against the Nazis. Yes, 100,000. She coordinated sabotage missions, organized ambushes, and disrupted supply lines to clear the path for the Allied invasion. And they listened to her, not because she was loud, but because she was lethal.
One of her operators lost their radio codes, so Nancy, on foot, biked more than 300 miles through enemy territory in 3 days to reestablish contact. She carried dynamite in her pack and a pistol in her coat. She drank them in under the table, she swore like hell, and she killed a Nazi with her bare hands during a mission.
After the war, she was awarded medals from France, Britain, and the US, but not from Australia until 2004. Her response? They can stick their medals where the monkey puts his nuts. Icon.
She seems like someone we would be friends with.
Absolutely.
Nancy Wake died at the age of 98 in 2011. Fierce, funny, unapologetic, and still not talked about enough. She didn't just fight fascists, she humiliated them.
Noor Inayat Khan was a soft-spoken poet, a harpist, a dreamer, and one of the most dangerous women in Nazi-occupied France.
She was the daughter of an Indian Sufi mystic and an American mother, raised in a pacifist household that valued peace, truth, and the inner life. But when Hitler invaded France, Noor made the decision that she would resist.
She also joined the British Special Operations Executive and was dropped into France as a wireless operator, the most dangerous job in the war. The average life expectancy for someone in her role was 6 weeks, nor lasted over 3 months.
She refused to leave even after her entire network had been captured. She kept moving, transmitting from rooftops and basements, slipping through not.
I'm sorry, that was a full Brad Pitt.
I know. I glitched out, Nazi. Slipping through Nazi traps while carrying her radio equipment on her back. She was hunted, cornered, and when she was finally caught, she escaped. Not once, but twice.
She was recaptured and sent to prison, shackled hand and foot, held in solitary confinement, interrogated, tortured, and never gave up a name. She never broke.
They eventually sent her to Dachau concentration camp where she was executed. Her final word, liberté, freedom, whispered through bloodied lips in the face of her murderers.
Noor didn't carry a weapon. She didn't lead an army. She carried a radio and the knowledge that truth still mattered. She resisted with grace, with strength, with silence, and with a bravery that should echo through every history book, but rarely does. All right, now let's talk about Virginia Hall, an American with a wooden leg who became the most dangerous Allied spy in Nazi-occupied France. The brown shirts didn't know her name, but they knew her reputation, and they feared her enough to issue a shoot-on-sight order.
She was born in Baltimore to a privileged family and dreamed of joining the U.S. Foreign Service, but after a hunting accident left her with a prosthetic leg, she called it Cuthbert.
Yeah, that's what she named her leg.
Cuthbert. The State Department rejected her, not because she lacked the brains or the drive, but because she was a disabled woman in a world that didn't see value in either.
So what did Virginia do? She joined the British Special Operations Executive and became the architect of chaos behind enemy lines. She posed as an elderly milkmaid, traveled on foot across the Pyrenees, delivered messages under the noses of Nazi patrols, and she built one of the largest resistance networks in France, sabotaging bridges, gathering intel, and coordinating supply drops that would help turn the tide of the war.
She didn't just help the resistance, she was the resistance. Her work laid the foundation for D-Day preparations, and when she returned to France for a second mission, now with the newly formed American OSS, she disguised herself again, this time with gray hair and rotting teeth, to slip through enemy checkpoints.
But here is what we have to name. Virginia Hall was a white woman working within a U.S. intelligence system that, while powerful, was still deeply unequal. While she was planting bombs and sending encrypted messages, Black women were being rejected from war jobs or shunted into the most dangerous, lowest paid positions. Indigenous women were still being sterilized without consent, and Japanese American women were raising children behind barbed wire.
Virginia herself, too, faced discrimination, but she also benefited from the structures that shut others out. Her legacy is complicated but powerful. She broke through the ceiling only after losing a leg, and when she did, she made her work speak much louder than her limp.
The Nazis never caught her. Even after the war, she rarely talked about what she did. She just kept working for the CIA quietly for years. No parades, no glory, just relentless service and a middle finger to every man who said she couldn't. Because, Jen, we don't yield to disrespectful men.
Never, ever. So if you're ever wondering whether one woman can make a difference, Virginia Hall's name should be the answer.
And now it is time for mine and my daughter's favorite. Okay. I love her so much. Okay. Hedy Lamarr might be known as the most beautiful woman in Hollywood, but she was also one of the most brilliant minds of her time. My daughter adores her, and honestly, same.
Born in Austria, Hedy was born to a Jewish family, and her father nurtured her early love of math and science, discussing philosophy and engineering with her as a young child. It was this foundation, built long before the spotlight, that shaped her capacity to imagine new possibilities. And she escaped an abusive marriage to Frederick Mandel, a fascist arms dealer who supplied munitions to Mussolini and Hitler and tried to control every part of her life. She fled to the U.S., escaping both her husband's control and the rising anti-Semitic persecution in Europe, signed with MGM, and became a screen icon. But behind the red lipstick and the silver screen, she was inventing technology decades ahead of her times.
Hedy co-invented frequency-hopping spread spectrum technology with composer George Antheil during World War II. Their design was meant to prevent Nazi torpedoes from jamming Allied signals. The U.S. Navy ignored her. Why? Because she looked like a movie star and not an engineer. They told her to sell war bonds instead.
Let's be honest, this wasn't just sexism, it was erasure. She had a functioning patent that would later become the foundation for Wi-Fi, GPS, and Bluetooth, and she never even made a dime from it.
She once said, "Any girl can be glamorous. All she has to do is stand still and look stupid." Hedy refused to stand still. She read physics textbooks between takes. She scribbled formulas on napkins at parties. She was doing the work even when no one believed her capable of it.
And just like so many women, especially immigrants and survivors, her intelligence was dismissed, mocked, and forgotten. Not because it wasn't there, but because men couldn't imagine it coexisting with her beauty.
Let's put this in context. While men in labs got government contracts and military backing for ideas that did not work, Hedy was laughed out of rooms for having one that did. She wasn't invited to strategy meetings, she wasn't taken seriously by the war machine, and she wasn't even considered a candidate for scientific contribution, because beauty to them canceled out the brilliance.
And this wasn't just a loss for her, it was a loss for all of us. Imagine how much faster that we could have advanced. How many other brilliant women were dismissed? How many were never even allowed in the same room?
It wasn't until decades later that she got recognition. She was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 2014, long after her death. But the legacy she left, it's in every smartphone, every GPS system, and every time we connect without wires.
So the next time someone tries to tell you what a woman can or can't be, just say, Hedy Lamarr invented Wi-Fi and still had to prove that she wasn't just a pretty face.
She fought fascism with science, she fought sexism with genius, and she left behind a legacy that says beauty and brains are not opposites, they are power.
She saw the future and she built it, and now our daughters are holding it in the palm of their hands.
Sorry, my cat constantly is hungry. I don't know what's wrong with him. We just spent the last segment talking about women who risked their lives to preserve the truth, to speak out when speaking out was a death sentence. And now in 2025, we're watching those same truths get deleted, not by bombs, but by budget cuts, whiteboards, and executive orders.
So here's your national news rundown. Trump is rewriting history, not metaphorically, literally. And it's happening faster than most people can even keep up.
Let's start with the firing of Dr. Carla Hayden, the first Black woman and first woman ever to serve as Librarian of Congress. Her crime, preserving history, modernizing public access to archives, and refusing to play political games with knowledge. Fired by email. No hearing, no public process, just erased, like she was a glitch in their simulation.
She was a guardian of facts, of literature, of public memory, and they came for her with a pink slip. You don't do that unless you're scared of what she's protecting. They don't want guardians, they want gatekeepers.
And it doesn't stop there. The National Park Service recently deleted the word transgender from the Stonewall Monument website. LGBTQ was shortened to just LGB. Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, vanished.
That's not a clerical update. That is a cultural purge. If you're deleting Black and brown and trans women who started the damn riot, you are not preserving history. You are scrubbing it with bleach and calling it clean.
Harriet Tubman was removed from pages about the Underground Railroad. A Pentagon page about Jackie Robinson's military service just disappeared. And the pages about the Little Rock Nine, rewritten. Now it says they were seeking education, like they weren't literally escorted by the National Guard past white supremacists just to enter a classroom.
This is revisionism with a search bar. It's fascism with a delete key, and historians are already sounding the alarm.
Yale professor David Blight, Pulitzer winner, expert on the Civil War, said this is the same kind of history twisting we saw after the Confederacy fell. That whole lost cause narrative that said the Civil War wasn't about slavery, That didn't come out of nowhere. It came from Southern historians, churches, and school books that deliberately lied for over 100 years. And I will tell you that the schools that I went to said the same thing.
Exactly. They called it reconciliation, but what it really was erasure, a silent agreement that white supremacy is more comfortable than the truth.
And now we're watching it happen again because Trump and the Heritage Foundation don't just want to change the future, they want to control the past. If you control the past, you can justify anything in the present.
Let's talk about suspending habeas corpus. Stephen Miller publicly said this week that they are actively looking into it. That means the government can detain people, migrants, protesters, maybe even me and Chelsey, without a trial.
The justification, they say the U.S. is under invasion, using language ripped straight from the Nazi playbook. After the Reichstag fire in 1933, Hitler claimed the country was under attack and passed emergency laws that let him imprison people indefinitely. This isn't a slippery slope, it's deja vu.
Under invasion by who? Because the borders are so secure now. So who are we under invasion by?
Oh, Tren de Aragua.
It's ridiculous. Makes me so.
The Alien Enemies Act.
Yeah, I know, but it doesn't even make sense.
I know.
Because we're not under an invasion, especially when we've got Lance Gooden tweeting every day about how, no one's entering the country anymore.
How secure the borders are. What was it? I literally saw an article today that the Mexican cartel made a deal with the Trump administration and has entered our country.
That doesn't surprise me at all. And then they're going to blame Biden.
Ding, ding, ding.
No, and also they want to smuggle the fentanyl so they can keep saying we have a fentanyl problem so they can continue to
say
there's an issue. Yep. And let's not...
That's ringing Reagan and the Contra era.
Exactly. It's giving history repeating itself. Let's not forget...
It's giving an orange asshole.
It is. It's giving Cheeto mouth. Let's not forget curriculum changes. They are pushing textbook edits to teach that the 2020 election was stolen. Not maybe, not some believe, just was. That is not education. That's indoctrination.
And that is in Oklahoma currently. So it's probably going to
trickle
make
down.
Its way out.
Yep.
This cat.
Meow.
You cannot raise a generation on lies and expect them to fight for democracy, because by the time they realize that they've been lied to, the system that told them those lies will be too powerful to challenge.
So here's the truth. History doesn't erase itself. It gets erased on purpose by men with power who know damn well that memory is rebellion.
That's why Sophie Scholl passed out pamphlets, why Noor Khan kept broadcasting, why Hedy Lamarr filed patents that no one took seriously.
Because truth always threatens tyrants, and storytelling, real, raw, inclusive storytelling is resistance.
So if you're listening to this right now and you feel overwhelmed, good, you should, but don't let that freeze you, let it fuel you.
Because every book they ban, every page they delete, every lie they print, it's your call to action.
So if you're thinking that this is just a Washington, D.C. problem, think again. What's happening on the federal level is being beta tested right here in Texas, and the test results, authoritarianism, now with a Lone Star logo.
All right, let's talk about book bans. Harris County just released a list of more than 800 books challenged or pulled from public school libraries. Want to know what made the list? Mouse, a Pulitzer Prize winning graphic novel about the Holocaust. Anne Frank's Diary, a biography of Malcolm X. Books about Rosa Parks, Ta-Nehisi Coates. Even children's stories about desegregation and the Underground Railroad. It's disgusting.
I know. Let me be blunt. These aren't just concerned parent complaints. These are deliberate, coordinated purges. And they target truth like it's a threat, because it is too fascist. When kids read about resistance, about oppression, about survival, they ask questions. And questions are so dangerous to the people trying to stay in power.
Fragile white egos.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just what they're banning. It's about what they're replacing it with. State-approved curriculum that glosses over slavery, that reframes white supremacy as cultural tradition, that uses sanitized language like migration events instead of forced displacement or colonization.
We've had districts here, our districts, where teachers were told that they couldn't say the word racism without presenting both sides. How are there two sides to racism? They're not. We had a principal in Colleyville fired after parents complained he talked about systemic inequality. That's not education. That's indoctrination with a Texas accent.
But the ironic part is Texas loves to talk about freedom. But
Don't tread on me.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Our own state criminalizes librarians, attempted to ban drag performances. My daughter goes to A&M, and they were trying to ban Draggyland. Luckily, they weren't able to do that because the courts held it up. They're pushing people out of schools and even proposing bills that would remove voters from rolls after 2 years if they haven't voted.
They want to build an obedient citizen, one who fears the government but never questions it, one who doesn't know that dissent is patriotic, one who never learns that women in Nazi Germany were erased before they were imprisoned.
So here's what we're saying to every Texas mom who's listening to this. If you've ever signed a permission slip, read a bedtime story, or sat through a parent-teacher conference, you already are part of the resistance.
The battleground is your kid's classroom. The fight is over who gets to shape their mind. And we're not giving that up to bigots and bureaucrats without one hell of a fight. So we're going to close this episode with the tradition that we started early in the show, and we definitely missed on our last episode. Letters to America. And today they're addressed to the women who wouldn't stay silent.
To Sophie, Noor, Nancy, Virginia, Hedy, and the millions of unnamed mothers, daughters, sisters, and students who stood up when the world told them to sit down. We see you, we carry you, and we are still not quiet.
Dear Sophie, I'm raising a daughter in Texas who is being told her story does not matter, but I've taught them about you, and they know that standing up is never the wrong choice. Even if it's hard, even if it's scary, especially then.
Especially then.
If you are listening, we invite you to write your own letter to America, to a resistance fighter, to your daughter, to your past self. Email us, send us a voice note. We may read or play it on a future episode.
Here's your homework for this week. Pick up one banned book and read it with your kid, with your neighbor, with your book club. Make it a family act of defiance, because reclaiming truth is resistance.
And call your school board. Ask what's being removed, ask who's deciding, ask why. Don't let silence fill the space where our kids' history should be. Every single one of these women, Sophie, Nancy, Noor, Virginia, and Hedy, they didn't just resist oppression. They redefined what resistance could be, with paper, with code, with science, with silence, with fists.
I like the fist part a lot. Because that's how I feel. I wish I could just give a fist to a lot of these people.
I know.
They came from different places, different faiths, different backgrounds. Some were raised in comfort, others in conflict. But when fascism knocked, none of them backed down. They chose courage over comfort. They acted when action seemed impossible.
And they were not perfect. They lived within systems that failed others, just like ours still does. But they cracked the armor of tyranny just enough for us to see through it. They left us blueprints, warnings, proof that even in the darkest moments, resistance is possible and the sun still shines.
So the question isn't whether we can follow in their footsteps. The question is whether we will. Will we
Nolan's down here. Sorry.
Will we speak when silence is safer? Will we stand when our knees shake? Will we teach our daughters and sons what real power looks like?
He found the kitty cat.
Oh, kitty cat.
Because it doesn't look like domination. It looks like defiance. It looks like truth. It looks like 5 women, some forgotten, some finally remembered, who said no to the machine and dared to build something better in its place.
Next time on Moms Against the Machine, we'll head to the factory floors, the front lines, the back rooms of code breakers, because part 2 is all about how women took over the war effort and what happened after the victory parade.
And spoiler alert, they didn't get medals. They got pink slips.
Until then, stay loud, stay informed, and never underestimate a mom with a microphone.
Or a bookshelf.
See y'all next week.